All right. Good evening. Welcome to the virtual open house for the 9th Street Protected Bike Lane project. My name is George Branyan. This meeting will have a repeating format. We want it to be as available for people with different schedules as much as possible. So we will be doing a presentation. Takes about 15 minutes, starting in a few moments. Then after that, we'll have Q&A. We'll stop a little bit before the end of the hour, probably 10 till, so we can get a break. And then we're going to do the same thing again at 5 o'clock, the same thing again at 6 o'clock. So hopefully if folks who are interested in learning about the project but that aren't able to be here at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, can make it in the last hour or whatever one is convenient. Let me do a couple housekeeping items here first. I apologize, I've lost my housekeeping slide. Just a minute. So, welcome to our virtual public meeting. This is my first time driving the controls of a virtual public meeting. I know there have been a lot of them over the last few months, but it's my first time driving, so please be patient with me. We're learning how to do this format. Many of us are still learning how to do this format. So to begin with, we will review some basic controls, help you participate on this platform. Please note that this is an open meeting as required by DC Code 2-578. This meeting is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to the public. The video file, both in audio and video, will be shared on our project website within, I think, 24 hours after this meeting has ended. This meeting is not being live streamed. Some of our meetings have been, this one is not. If you do not wish to have your voice recorded, please do not ask to speak. You may enter any questions or comments you have in the Q&A, which we will review in the next few slides. So in terms of audio and muting, everyone is on mute. You cannot unmute yourself. We can unmute you during the Q&A. This helps ensure the meeting runs smoothly and there are no auditory disruptions during the presentation. To request to speak, you'll need to use the raise hand feature on the platform. Your video camera is off by default and you will not be able to share video. Reduce the bandwidth of the meeting. Only the project team will be sharing video to improve the overall quality for all participants. All right, I'm going to start by sharing my screen and start the presentation. Let's see. Okay. Okay. All right. So thank you for coming to the 9th Street Northwest Protected Bike Lane Project Virtual Open House. My name is George Branyan. I manage the active transportation branch at DDOT, and there's my email. We'll put that in the chat as well. I'm joined today by Mike Goodnow, bicycle program specialist with the active transportation team. There's Mike's email address, as well.
Good afternoon, everyone.
See if we can get it to change pages. It's a little slow. Oops. All right, there we go. So the agenda will be to talk about DDOT's bikeway program, the project planning background for this project, its history, some of the key project features, benefits and impacts. We'll take a look at the project plans, and then we'll talk about next steps. So the question is often asked, why bike lanes? Well, they are safer for all road users, especially bicyclists. They actually do improve safety for all road users because of the way they typically reconfigure the roadway. They, of course, have lots of other individual benefits. They have economic benefits. Typically, often one of the main things is environmental benefits and reduced amount of cars on the road and CO2 emissions, as well as system management benefits to reduced wear and tear. And a network is critical in supporting biking to have the bike routes easily connected to one another. And I will make a note that bike lanes may be used by scooters, skateboarders, electric wheels of all kinds, electric bikes, obviously. But it's one of the things that it has been useful is that where we've had sidewalk riding conflicts with pedestrians, with scooters or bicyclists, that we've found that the bike lanes typically pull people off of the sidewalk and give them room in the roadway, and that is better for pedestrians. What is a protected bike lane? This is a bike lane that is physically separated from the travel lanes where the vehicles are. We have different types of these, sometimes separated by flex posts, as in the upper picture, sometimes concrete islands, which may be combined with parked cars, which is a very substantial barrier then between the moving traffic and the bicyclists. And there's a reason that we are building more and more protected bike lanes. We're in the middle of a 20 miles by 2022 program. And on top of that, the mayor has charged us with building 10 miles of protected bike lanes per year starting next year. We ramped up over the last couple of years, and we're ramping up even further to build protected bike lanes. And the reason we want to build protected bike lanes is that standard bike lanes, just the regular painted bike lanes or roadways without bike lanes at all, are really high stress facilities to bike on. Only the strong and fearless typically ride on those, or in this green illustration, the highly confident riders, which is a relatively small percentage of the population. But what we found, and many cities across the country found that by building protected bike lanes, they'd be able to expand the group of people, the number of people who feel comfortable enough to ride in them by a significant amount. So we're looking for those people who are somewhat confident, and also the interested but concerned, which is the largest group of people who are not often comfortable with regular bike lanes and may bike on the sidewalk or not bike at all because they just don't feel safe. And so the protected bike lanes create a situation where people feel much safer and are much more likely to try riding to work or for errands or for recreation. And so that is one of the main reasons we're building those. And that all leads us towards our sustainability goals. The district has a goal to have 75% of all trips by walking, biking, or transit by 2032. And we're at about 50%, about 5% of people bike to work. Of DC residents, about 12 or 14% walk to work. The rest, and then a large number, about between 35 to 38% over the last few years have take transit. So that gets us to 50% or a little over 50% of all those trips. So we still need to add 15% more to that basket of walk, bike, or transit. And this is one of the ways to increase that. Some of the project planning background has to do with our long-range plans. In 2016, the first Move DC called for a protected bike lane on the east side of eastern downtown. The new Move DC update does call for 9th Street to be the protected bike lane through the eastern downtown area, as well as 7th Street, but that one would be much further out in the planning process. To move forward the eastern downtown bike lane, protected bike lane concept, we started a study in 2017, concluded a study in 2017, which looked at multiple corridors in this section of downtown. It looked at from 4th Street all the way over to 9th Street, as defined and defined it as the eastern downtown area. I won't go into all these bullets here, but this project was developed out of that feasibility study, as 9th Street was one of two priority or two preferred corridors to come out of that study. All the other ones fell off as we applied different tests to them, and compared and contrasted the how safe it made it, how it affected traffic, how it affected parking. And 9th Street became the preferred alternative. And we began to move it forward in 2018. It was put on hold in late 2018. And then the mayor announced a restart of this project in May of 21. So all of you know up front that this is not going to be constructed this year. Right now, we are working on taking all these comments that we hope to get tonight and through all the other outreach we've been doing to the 30% plans, which is what we have right now. And the mayor's budget has provided funding for to complete the design in FY22 and to construct this in FY23, which begins on October 1st, 2022. So conceivably, the construction would start no earlier than October of next year. So it gives us a lot of time to take comments and refine these plans. Outreach to date, since we restarted this, we've on June 3rd, we met with Convention Center, Events DC. We've met with 3 out of the 4 ANCs, and up next is ANC 2F on August 11. And we met with the Shaw Main Street organization. So the study that looked at multiple corridors in this region of downtown looked at 5th and 6th. It looked at 6th. It looked at 6 as a separated bikeway, a 2-way cycle track on the east side of 6, and then a 9th Street east side protected bike lane. And there's a lot of information on this slide, but it's here to explain that under all these categories, we had 9th Street came out as the best alternative in terms of all those different impacts. The continuity of the bike lane, how much of it is protected, conflicts with turning vehicles that cyclists would encounter at intersections, potential pedestrian conflicts, intersection traffic impacts, estimated travel time in the AM and the PM, potential large event space impacts such as the convention center, street parking, and Sunday angle, back-in angle parking. And when you take all these together, the 9th Street was the best alternative. All right, so this is the first slide that takes a look at the plans. This shows the 9th Street north of Mass Avenue up to Florida/U Street. So this is the section that is 2-way. So on the left is the existing condition, which is 2 lanes northbound, 2 lanes southbound, and parking on each side. Some of that parking is metered. Some of that parking is resident only. Some of it is RPP, resident permit parking. But that is the basic configuration from Mass Ave up to Florida U. On the right, it shows the proposed condition and how we are fitting in this bike lane. So what you see on the right side next to the sidewalk is a 2-way cycle track with the yellow dashes going down it. Then a buffer area of about 3 feet, and then a parking lane, and then 1 northbound travel lane. And then on the opposite side of the street it is essentially the same as it is in existing condition with 2 southbound lanes and a parking lane. Now you also see that there's a turn pocket in there, and that is something we're adding all along the corridor, which helps the street operate better for drivers, more safely for drivers, and protects both cyclists and pedestrians from left-turning vehicles, because they're given a pocket to wait in and then an arrow to move on. And when they have a green arrow, the peds and the bikes have a red light and a don't walk. So this is how it looks north of Mass Ave. Now this section is just a sample of what it would look like south of Mass Ave. So right now there's parking on the east side, parking on the west side, predominantly metered parking, 2-hour metered parking. And then there are 3 southbound lanes. This shows a bus lane. The bus lane is now no longer in use. We've talked about transit people. This is not, the couple, which is 7th and 9th, is no longer in service. There is only one bus that is on 9th Street currently. So that bus lane graphic does not apply to the existing condition anymore. So in the future condition, you can see that there is this 2-way cycle track or 2-way bike lane on the east side. And then you see a parking lane that is then outside of that bike lane. And then you also see a left turn pocket, which we're also adding to those southern blocks as well. And then 3 travel lanes. What isn't shown here is that west side travel lane on the left side would become parking outside of the peak hours, both AM and PM. The road, in order for the roadway to continue to flow about as well as it does today, a little bit better actually with the left turn pockets, we need to have 3 southbound lanes during peak. So in off peak, you would be able to park on the west side. Now this is an overhead sort of bird's eye view, a plan view, we call it, of the one-way section. So this is the section from Pennsylvania Avenue up to Mass Ave. So this is the last 2 blocks of that, from H to K. And so what you can see is the upper picture is the existing conditions, and the cars that are shown there are showing, the green ones are metered, the yellow ones are taxis, and then the sort of the brown ones is a valet zone. That valet zone now is the Cuba Libre, is taken up by the Cuba Libre streetery. But other than that change, this is the existing condition with the metered parking and the taxi stand. And so what you see below would be the future condition, where at the south end, which is the left end edge of each of these blocks, there's a left turn pocket to clean up the operations and provide storage for left turns. And then outside of the bike lane are the parking spaces. Both for the green ones would be metered spaces, and then the yellow would be the taxis that service the Renaissance Hotel. In this particular 2 blocks, you can see that there's there's a little bit of reduction in the metered parking, and there's maybe 1 reduction in the taxi stand space. It looks like it's the same here, but I looked at it in the actual physical area, and there's about 5 spaces now, and there will be about 4 in the future condition. The other thing I want to draw your attention to here, and I can point to it, which is these little islands here that are at the ends of the parking lane. These are raised concrete pedestrian crossing islands, which we are adding to this, which we wanted to add to this project back in 2018, and are in the plans. And these will help pedestrian safety, because people can cross the bike lane and wait for the signal to change and cross the street. These are used in New York City and many other places that are doing floating parking lanes that are outside the bike lane. And they typically have other benefits in terms of slowing turning vehicles, as well as traffic calming benefits for vehicles driving down the street, because that island is a raised curb edge close to their travel lane. So it tends to knock a couple miles per hour off people's speed. So it has a traffic calming effect, as well as a sort of a protective effect for pedestrians. Moving upward northbound to the 2-way section, this is the block from S to T. And this shows you how the one northbound lane is removed. The bike lane is against the east curb, which is on the bottom edge of the roadway. And then the purple cars are all, that's RPP. The dark purple cars shown in the illustration are resident only parking. So in this case, there's a small reduction in RO resident only in this particular block. A couple spaces are lost. I guess 4 spaces are lost. So there's the other thing I want to point out in this picture, in this plan view, is the left turn pocket. One of the reasons we lose a little bit of parking when we push the parking lane out is that we need some space for that left turn pocket that's turning left onto S Street. So as you can see, when you move the yellow line over to create the left turn pocket, then it takes away the room for the parking lane. So the parking lane is not able to come as far south on that block as it is on the north. It comes pretty far to the north because T is a one-way street. And so we're able to bring that up, don't have to have a turn pocket there. So that is one of the two-way sections. I wanted to show another section up in the part of the corridor from S to U. And so it's a little bit, this one's a little bit zoomed out, I apologize, but the block on the right here from T to U, this was a difficult block because it's relatively short and we have to have the turn pockets at both ends of the block. And this meant that when we tried to fit in the 2 southbound lanes plus a parking lane as exists today and have parking on the other side, the distance between the 2 turn lanes, as I mentioned earlier, the turn lanes are extra space needed at the ends of a block. This block is relatively short. So we ended up with only about 2 or 3 parking places. And in some of our discussions with Shaw Main Street, they felt that that was that was too big an impact. And so we took a look at this block. We looked at the traffic analysis, and we found that that during the AM peak, it's definitely needed. The 2 lanes southbound are definitely needed. We have, I think, something like 600 to 700 cars in the AM peak hour. But other times of day and in the PM, which is interesting, the PM it doesn't even have 400 cars. So that can fit in 1 lane. Our rule of thumb is about 4 to 450 cars per a lane per hour in the urban context. And so what we came up with is those light green cars that are shown on the, which is the west side or the top side there. Those are rush restricted metered spaces. So this is a change from the existing condition. I believe some metered parking. The blue ones are 4-hour meters. It's a switch to rush hour restricted meters because we have to have those 2 lanes in the morning. But after that, after 9:30, it would go back to metered parking. That allowed us to move things over and get at least this, I think, 10 or 11 spots on the east side of that block from T to U. So just want to point that out. Trying to move on. So just an overview of some of the features, benefits, and impacts that I've been talking about a lot of these already, but let me just go through them on this table. So safety and continuity of the bike facility right now, it's a high stress and unsafe cycling condition. We don't get very many cyclists on 9th Street because it just isn't a very safe place to bike. And what we end up with is 1.6 miles of a protected bike lane. All the heavy turning movements are protected or prohibited, but mainly they're protected. Vehicular traffic, one of the things we look at and we do analysis on is what happens to the traffic flow, traffic, congestion. This corridor performs pretty well today already. There are a couple intersections that have a moderate amount of congestion. They would get just a little bit worse in the future condition. Another way to measure it is travel time, which is we found that the southbound AM peak travel time actually decreases. That means you'll be able to make faster progress southbound on the corridor in this future condition from 11 minutes to 8 minutes to get from the top to the bottom. This is mainly due to the turn pockets, which help clean up the turning vehicles, get them out of the flow of the through vehicles. Northbound PM travel does increase a little bit because, again, this is where we're removing one of the northbound lanes in the two-way section. But it based on the modeling, it increases from about 4.5 to 5 minutes. So it's a very small increase. The safety concerns, right now, there are no dedicated turn lanes anywhere on this corridor, which leads to a high number of rear end and side swipe crashes. This is typical of streets without left turn pockets. This project would add 10 dedicated left turn lane pockets and the addition of the pedestrian crossing islands to improve pedestrian crossing safety and some traffic calming impact. Curbside uses, mainly parking. I know many of you are here to learn about the parking impacts. From the entire study area of the original feasibility study, there are between 4th and 9th Street on all those corridors, there are about 1,800 total spaces, just to give you a sort of a large global look at the area. On this corridor, there are, in the existing condition, 238 metered spaces, 54 resident only, 44 resident permit parking RPP, 3 commercial loading zones near N&M streets. There are no PUDO zones in this area. There are 2 streeteries currently using about 13 spaces worth of space. In the future condition, with the bike lane installed, there would be a reduction of 86 meters out of the 238. 86 meters removed. Then 35 would be returned as rush hour restricted metered spaces. So in terms of full-time metered spaces, 86 removed, but 35 will put back as rush hour restricted. 15 resident-only spaces would be removed. 9 RPP spaces removed. Additional loading and PUDO zones can be added. We're looking for information on that. And then the streeteries is an open question because the program, again, has been extended, but we'll have new regulations next February. One of the things I believe will happen is that the price per square foot to have a streetery it'll be substantially more than free, which is what it is now. And they're still working on what that will be. So the streeteries is an open question. There are 2 streeteries, the Convention Center and Cuba Libre, and we're certainly interested in having a conversation about how those could continue. For the Sunday angled parking, this is just about a 1-for-1. The 2 congregations are on the street and currently have about 117 back-in angle spaces on Sunday. This New Bethel Baptist Church would have to move its back-in angle from the east side of the street to the west side, but it remains with maybe a reduction of 1 space. It's a little hard to, there's no lines defining where people back in, so it's a little hard to know if it's exactly this, same amount of space. This is slightly less space, but we think it would be about the same. And then for Shiloh Baptist, there's no change at all because they're on the east side of the street, so the back-in angle parking is completely unaffected for Shiloh. And then the last major stakeholder in terms of meeting spaces, Convention Center, and they have a number of shuttles and semi-trucks and media vehicles, and so we've had a meeting with them, and we are we've taken their information, and we will be doing everything we can, and we believe we can accommodate all the uses that they have now and all the shuttle routing and loading that they are doing currently within the parking lanes that will be just simply pushed out beyond the cycle. All right, been throwing a lot of information at you, so I'm done with the content slides, and this is our Next steps, as I said, we've done ANC and Shaw Main Street meeting outreach. This is the DDOT hosted open house today, this evening. We are working to make refinements to the 30% plans by the end of the summer. We probably will continue to finish that up into September. And then that's when we will turn it over to our engineering team to develop the 65 and then 100% plans over the next 5 to 6 months. We're looking to have, I think, some 65% plans in the fall to go to the ANCs again and put out the notice of intent again to take more feedback, answer questions. And right now, the construction is tentatively scheduled for the fall of 2022. All right.